Okay, so we're out here with the engine now, and this is Aaron's wicked little EJ25 that he's putting in his really nice Subaru. If you haven't watched that video of him running it, you need to go back and watch it. He since blew it up. You should be ashamed of yourself. So now what we're doing is we got the harness stripped. We've got it pretty well cleaned up. I'll clean it some more because there's still some grime on these connectors, but we've got it laid out on the engine. And what we're doing now is just making sure that everything fits and that we like our junction points. And it looks a little crazy, like it kind of rat's nested here, but it is an organized chaos. And then the other thing we did is we laid it out to find things like this. This is the old oil pressure switch. You know, it's not really a sensor. It just turns off at 11 pounds or something like that.
Which is completely worthless.
Yeah, if that light comes on, this engine's already done. It's over. So the other things we're doing here are, since we've gotten rid of that sensor or that switch and had replaced it with an actual sensor, is we cut the leads off the sensor cable, and I'll extend these to a connector that will break out with the rest of the engine harness over here, and we'll go to the lead with the zip tie on it there. It's marked. And then just check things like the throttle body connector, map sensor connector, and the knock sensor, which the knock sensor that's on here is a wideband, and until we figure out what to do about that, we're going to run the factory knock sensor. We've got TGVs deleted, so there's some other things that we're going to delete here. Like this is a TGV sensor. This will actually go to an ethanol sensor now, but this was the solenoid, so we no longer have TGVs.
Here's the rest of it.
And yeah, so there's the other two over there. That one we're getting rid of. We don't need that sensor.
This one fire.
And we don't need the solenoid over there. The only one we need out of those 4 TGV connectors is this one for ethanol content. So now that we've got all this marked, I can go back to the wiring shop and start tearing out what we don't need, adding what we do need, and then re-looming it. So about a week's worth of work left as far as like still ordering stuff and getting it in. It's only a few hours worth of work, but now we can take this thing back off and throw it back up on the bench. Okay, so we have the harness back in the wiring studio, but before we get started here, I need to explain something. I made a mistake because I am still learning how to import and edit on an iPad, and I accidentally deleted the first couple clips of this stage of this wiring build. So what I need to do now is lay out basically what I did and explain it the best I can to still get the information out there. Luckily it was a simple step, so I'm just going to dive right into it and explain it, and it'll transition seamlessly right into the rest of the video that I didn't delete. Okay, so you'll see this pile of stuff here sitting over there when the video transitions into the clips I didn't delete. But what I did is I laid out the connectors and I put one wire back. So essentially this pile of wires went to the TGV solenoid on the driver's side bank, and it went over to the TGV sensor and the TGV solenoid on the passenger side bank. Now again, we're keeping the TGV sensor over here because that apparently is going to be used as an ethanol content sensor input. So we left that alone, but all of these wires except for 2, again, that you'll see when it transitions into the clips I didn't delete, went to this connector here. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to take this wire out that I actually put back. It's super simple. You just have to have, you know, the right tool, but it can still be some tool that you made. So the tool that I made is actually a Honda V6 timing belt tensioner pin. I just call them grenade pins. And then I sharpen the end of it, as you can see right there. And that's what I use to depin stuff. It works really well and it doesn't do any damage to most connectors. You know, some you got to use a safety pin or the proper tool. But basically, to get these pins out, what you would do is this wire came all the way down here to that solenoid. So basically you just chase it and pull it right through all of your zip ties, and then you have it laid out like that. So your next step would be to grab a hold of the wire lock here. Some are different, but this one just pulls straight out. Pull it out, and what that does is it unblocks the pin locks down in this connector, and I'm going to try to make this as easy to see as possible. And these are a style where you got to go in from the top. Essentially you have your pin here and your lock is on top of it, and all you need to do is bring your tool in this orientation and pry the lock up, and then the pin releases. So this is super easy to do. So this is the pin here that we're taking out. Slide in. Just keep some downward pressure on it. You see how the tool is kind of at this orientation? Just pull the wire straight out. Super easy. So then, just to kind of keep everything together for now, put your lock back, and that's it. So then what it's going to do now is the video is going to transition into me taking out these two wires that are sensor power and sensor ground for the TGV sensor over here, and redoing these junctions. So okay, so as you can see, we've got most of what we wanted to remove out. We've got all the connectors off. However, there are two wires left behind. These two wires went to the TGV sensor connector over on the passenger side bank, but they came through and they come to junctions in what I'm calling the throttle breakout. And there's two junctions in here. One of them is sensor ground, one of them is sensor power. So I'm assuming we have one wire coming in, that is the source, and then we've got three going out the same direction and one coming out to the throttle. So this is a 1 to 4 breakout. Is we need to delete this wire without disturbing those other 4 because they're important. And the same goes for the junction down here, which is the sensor ground. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this apart and show you how to make it super clean. But there is an easier way to do it. What you can do is just use adhesive line shrink wrap, cut this wire, and then just put some adhesive lined on it and heat it up and shrink it. And I will show you on a dummy wire how to do that now. That should be very easy to do. However, I want to redo these big bulky junctions. So what we're going to do now is simulate this, and we will simulate it on the end of this wire. So what I like to use here is some stuff called CPA. Now this is 3/16, so don't let that confuse you. This is actually a piece of 1/8. I just didn't have the package with the number on it to show you for my 1/8. So we're going to toss that. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to know exactly where the end of this wire is. So we'll put it a little over halfway through. And then we'll grab our heat gun, shrink it, and then I just use my wire strippers. They've got a nice smooth surface in here, and I let them crush it. Let it take some of the heat out of it, and then open it up. And there, as you can see, you have a nice, clean, sealed surface. And the reason I like the CPA for this is the amount of adhesive on the inside of it. That would look good inside your harness right here. However, I don't like how bulky these junctions are, so now I'm going to show you how to redo these properly. This is some of 2005's finest electrical tape, and it is filled with some sort of butyl. Oh, that is awful. Great. Okay, since we've got this cleaned up now and we have a little extra length to play with here, what we're going to do is actually de-pin this power wire. It's an easy one. Pull that out. See you later. Then we'll de-pin sensor power here for the throttle position. It would appear its lock is generally the same as the others. It is. Let's cut these wires off. I'm actually going to make a nice clean cut here. Right at the insulation. I know scissors aren't the proper tool for that. Fight me. We're going to cut that junction out. So what we need to do is strip these now, and we'll strip a healthy amount off of them, but we need our shrink wrap first. So the CPA 3/16 I showed you a minute ago, that's going to be perfect for this. 2 inches or so. We'll slide it down these wires here. We'll strip them back half an inch. Now what we're going to do is twist them together as tight as we can. This is the part where some of you may want to do this method to avoid doing all of this. This is definitely the easier way to go, because what you're going to need here is I like to call them bare butt connectors because I think that's funny, but it is a non-insulated barrel connector. That's its proper name. So what you'll do is you'll slide it on. And then you can crimp it with a pair of this style wire crimpers, but I like to use my DMC tool here. Crimp it down, nice tight crimp. Clamp it down, crimp it, pull the seal through, grab our heat gun, and shrink it. And the adhesive in here will seal this up nice. It'll definitely make this a lot smaller than it was before. So that turned out to be a really nice product. Alright, so as you can see, we've got these two junctions done. They're much smaller, much cleaner. My hands are disgusting now, but that is definitely a lot nicer than it was. So the next step here is going to be to basically zip tie this back up so it stays together. And then we need to start basically using the Excel file that I had on the iPad to document this entire harness. So that's going to be a little time consuming. I'll show you how to do the first couple and then we'll time lapse it for the rest. So now it's time to move on to the documentation portion of the video. This is never super fun, but it is important, especially if you're going to use flex loom and not split loom. You got to make sure you do this, because if you put a wire back in the wrong place, there's a chance you could do some real damage. So you want to do this properly. You want to take your time with it and make sure that you get everything listed perfectly. That way you don't have any mishaps when you go to put this thing on the engine, fire something up, and end up with potentially a fire. So you want to be very careful about how you do this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and show you how to do it and get started. As you can see, I've got numbers on each of these connectors and they go 1 through 28. You can do this any way you want, Sharpie, whatever. I just happen to have these little stickies, so I use those. So moving over to the Excel document here, you see I have a column listed: connector number, connector name, pin, color, and note. We'll get to this last, but first we have connector C1 here, which is just this guy, number 1. The next one will be C2. Now this is just listed driver's side body connector, brown 16 pin, so we know it's this one, which that's unique on this harness. It's not going to be hard to tell. And then we have pins 1 through 16, and then what we're going to do is go through and list the wire colors, and then we'll get to the note next. So looking from the back with the top up, this is pin 1, 2, 3, and 4. So pin 1 here is a red yellow, so we'll type in all caps red yellow. Next up we've got black red. Next up we have light green yellow, so LTGRN. I can't type, I'm like a 4-year-old on this keyboard. Then we've got P4, which is a solid red. Okay, good grief. So next up, pin 5 will be underneath pin 1. So it looks that we have a solid yellow. P6 is a white yellow. 7, from what I can tell so far, is blue, and it appears we have a yellow stripe, so blue yellow. P8, that is green yellow. P9, that is yellow white. I hate those two colors together. It's very hard to tell that the white stripe is there. Pin 10, we have white, just solid white. Pin 11, we dig down, is a blue white. Pin 12, green white. Pin 13, that's another black red, and we'll get into what to do about the fact that there's duplicates, and I'll explain those in a second. So 13, black red. 14, black blue. 15, black yellow. And 16, we have another duplicate black blue. So that's where the notes section comes into play. As we saw, we have duplicate wires here, and we need to figure out exactly where they go to make sure that we put those wires back in the same spot, or if it doesn't matter if they go back in the same spot. Chances are it doesn't matter, but you just kind of want to make sure, because you don't want to upset any electronics on the other end. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to chase every single one of these wires back to where it goes. But first what I want to do is do these duplicates, because the rest of it's monotonous work and I don't want to work through it all on video. So we'll start with these important ones that we know there's duplicates of. So this black red wire here, if you just tug on it, it pulls on this ground here. You can see it's clearly that wire. So we'll pull it back through, and what we'll do is we'll just type in the notes section here straight to C28. There, to C28. So the next one we have is another black red, that's P13. That's this guy here. So what we'll do is give him a little tug, and we see that actually it goes right into this disgusting junction. Now another note, I will be doing this junction like this one to keep things nice and clean. So that one just goes to junction before branch 1. So we'll type in to junction pre-breakout number 1. So we know that it's this junction. I mean, it's pretty clear, that's what it is, but some of them won't be quite as clear, and we'll get to that. But that wire comes out of that junction, right? It's hard to see right there, and goes to this connector as well. So there's chances are, well, I guess this ring terminal anyway, there's a chance that these wires can be interchanged, but considering there is a difference, we don't want to interchange them. So our next one here is black blue, this guy here. So we'll take a look at him, pull on it, and we can see pretty clearly, go straight to this C28. So we will type to C28. Okay, of course it won't copy it in when I want it to. There we go. So then the next one is pin 16, which is black blue, and we'll pull on it, see what happens. And it also goes clearly to C28. So knowing that those wires don't go anywhere but from here to here directly, they can actually be interchanged. So as long as a black blue ends up in pin 14 and pin 16, the circuit will be fine. There's no difference between those wires. But the red ones, chances are it'd be fine, but I want to make sure they go back where they belong. So we'll just type in to C28 here. And then we'll go ahead and just chase this red yellow wire so you can see how I go a little further down the line, because that was all pretty contained right here. So I'll do this one and the light green one just to give you a feeling of how this works. So we'll go ahead and pull on this wire, and it looks like it goes into a junction after breakout 2. So we'll type in to junction aft breakout number 2. Very simple. And then light green yellow. We'll pull on it. I just saw it move right here. So we'll pull on it again. It actually goes to this connector right here. So we're going to type in, that's pin number 2. So we'll type in to pin 2, well, to C15 P2. And then red, he goes into a junction aft breakout 3. So to junction, we'll just copy that and then we'll type in a 3 here. And then what we'll do is we will just do the rest of these, aside from these 3 down here, the same way. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so as you can see in the Excel file, I basically chased all of these wires to where they go. This is mainly coil pack control and injector control, and then there was a few grounds to C28 in there. So Subaru actually made quite a nice wiring system here, where this is all pretty much your outputs on the engine. I'm assuming we get more sensor inputs through here. But the nice thing about doing things this way that you saw in the Excel file is you don't need to know that C19 and C9 are injector and coil pack outputs. You just need to know that they are number 19 and that this wire goes into this pin. So that takes a lot of the headache out of it, knowing exactly what each connector does. You just need to number them and make sure that they stay numbered. So basically what I'm going to do now is continue this all the way down through for every single one of these connectors. It's going to be quite a bit of work, but it's necessary to be able to do this properly and to not you know, make a mistake on this harness, as I stated earlier. So without further ado, let's get to it. Let's do 27 more connectors. All right, so that was a time-consuming process. That took me the better part of an hour and a half to get all this info in here. I mean, as you saw, I have, you know, C1, we went through this together, and then let's say, you know, C1 P3 is the light green that goes to C15 P2. So if we go down to C15 P2, light green yellow, to C1 P3. So again, it's double redundancy. So you have the wire from one end going to here, and then you have the wire from here going back to that end. So it gives you 2 layers of security, and then you just double check as you go to make sure that everything's right. So that's it for this video. The next video, we're going to be taking connectors off and getting loom on this harness and making it look good. So we'll go through all of that, and I'll give all the part numbers and everything to get you where you need to be to get the stuff you need to do your harness the way I would do this one. So that's it for this one. See you next time.